Okay, let's try and use the last bit of daylight to get this video done, because I did record this earlier and stuff happened and I lost the footage. So let's go again. Hey everyone, how you doing today? My name's Kirsty, and on today's video I'm going to be talking you through how I personally review books using the CAWPILE system as created by G from Book Roast. If you are unaware of this system, it's kind of become a bit more well known in the BookTube community, but this is a book rating system by the booktuber Book Roast, and she is amazing. Please do check her out. I will link her below. And she created this system. I've been on BookTube and watching BookTube for 5 years this year, and she was already doing this before then. So easily 6-7 years she's been doing this, at least. And it's a system that she created to help with coming up with book reviews and book ratings. And essentially there are 7 categories that she breaks it into. So for fiction, there's 3 different ones. There's one for fiction, one for non-fiction, one for graphic novels and manga. For fiction, which is the one that I'll be breaking down in this video, we have characters, atmosphere, writing, plot, intrigue, logic and enjoyment. For graphic novels, these all stay the same, and manga obviously, these all stay the same except for A, which changes to art style. And then when we look at non-fiction, we have credibility and research, authenticity and uniqueness, writing, personal impact it had on you as a reader, intrigue, logic, which is also informativeness, so how informative was it for you, and then enjoyment. For this video, I'm just focusing on the fiction because even though I read a lot of graphic novels and manga, I don't really need to talk about art style. And also, I read very, very little in the way of non-fiction. As the vast majority of my reading is fiction, we're going to focus on that. So what am I going to be doing in this video? We're just going to look at each of the categories. Some of it is stuff that I've taken from what G says that she uses to break it down and to give high ratings. Some of it is my own stuff that I've adapted along the way. And then for every category except for one that I will get into a bit later, I have got a kind of like a one key thing that if this category can do, it's guaranteed to get a perfect score in that particular area. The rest of it might be a 2 or a 3, but if in this area it does that thing, that will get a 10 for that, no matter how bad the rest of it is. First category, characters. We all know with me, I am very, very much a character-driven reader. I love books with a really fun, diverse, great cast of characters, and if I get to a point where I absolutely adore that character, you're solidified. So when it comes to with CAWPILE and analysing and giving a score to characters in a book, I look at, is the cast of characters diverse? Is there a really good mix of characters? Do they all have individual personalities and multiple facets to their personalities? Do they go through growth and change? Are they enjoyable? Even if you're supposed to dislike them, do you enjoy disliking them? Are they interesting? Do you give a crap about the main character? Are the secondary characters good? Are they all appropriate for their setting, etc.? That all goes into it. And particularly for me, it's are they good characters, and are they fun, and are you having a good time reading them? Do you want to punch them in the face? Are you supposed to want to punch them in the face? If so, then that's great. If you're not supposed to want to punch them in the face, maybe not so great. And then the one thing for characters that is guaranteed with me to give it a 10 out of 10 perfection is if I get to a point where I would die for this character, and that if something were to happen to them, I would be willing to hunt down that author to just be like, why would you do this to me? And that it would cause actual emotional devastation if something happened to that character. If I hit that stage, which I have hit in a few books, you can guarantee your ass that I will give that 10 out of 10. So books that I have given 10 stars to for characters include Shades of Magic series, has some of my all-time favourite characters in it, especially Lila and Holland and Kel. Those three just absolutely love, and I'm so excited for Threads of Power. You do not know how excited I am. It's gonna be so good. So that series, absolutely. A lot of Nalini Singh, which is gonna come up. I'm gonna try to limit how much I talk about it, but in particular, I would say her Psy Changeling series is absolutely all about the character for me. Many of those characters just live rent free in my little brain. And One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston, this one got a 10 for characters because there was just so much uniqueness and diversity. And as someone, it was my first kind of step into sapphic fiction, and it was one of the first few books that I ever read that was LGBT. So for me, it was incredible because obviously it was all these new casting of characters and all these new types of characters that I'd never experienced, and it was all exciting and shiny and new. Cemetery Boys is one of the books with characters because I would absolutely kill for Yadriel and Julian. I thought they were amazingly written. And also Kest and Brasti from the Greatcoat series. Fantastic. Because yes, I like Falkio, but I also can't stand him, and he is such a whiny little bitch, whereas those two actually have shown some growth over the books. They've had a lot more development, in my personal opinion, and I just really love them, and if anything happens to them, I would probably die. Next up, we have Atmosphere. And essentially for this, for Atmosphere, you're looking at the sort of emotional impact of a book. Were you appropriately feeling tense if it's a mystery thriller? Were you scared if it was a horror? Were you feeling the love if it was a romance, etc., etc.? Does it get your heart pounding? Did it make you cry? Did it make you laugh? All of those kind of good things. And for me in particular, what will get an absolute 10 out of 10 every single time, if it can make me laugh out loud to the point that I am almost crying or falling over or have to put the book down. Basically any reaction that means I have to put the book down to process the feelings that I am having, you're going to get a 10 out of 10. But in particular, especially if it's got a bit of spice and I'm like, oh, I need to take a break. If it makes me cry to the point that I absolutely have to take a break, and if it makes me laugh so much that I have to put the book down. But like I said, any reason that makes me put the book down, that is 10 out of 10. Some of the books that have done this for me, there's an extensive list, and I will be doing a follow-up video where I'm going to go through each of the things and give some recommendations for each of the categories, if these are your style of books. But just a few of these that did this. One that absolutely really stands out for me is Lost in the Neverwoods by Aidan Thomas. That book had me, I was on the way home from work listening to it, and it went in a direction I didn't see coming. And honestly, I sat there and I was just crying, and I was trying to obviously hide the fact that I was crying. And then this guy got up and came over and was like, "Are you okay?" Thinking something had happened and I'd had some really bad news. And I was just like, I'm just reading a book and it just... And the guy, I have never seen a guy back away so quickly. He was just like, okay, step away from the crazy lady. And I was just absolutely mortified because I was like, I'm so sorry. And yeah, I kind of didn't read any more audiobooks for a little while on the bus because I was scared of it happening again. It didn't until, what other book did it? There was another, Cemetery Boys bloody did it as well. So yeah, Aidan Thomas has done that to me twice. A Man and His Cat is another one that I would say is fantastic because it gave me sad feels, it gave me happy feels, it gave me all the cutesy feels, and I was smiling the whole way through that book. It was so, so good. The Hate You Give had me crying in the very first chapter, and it was so powerful all the way through. The atmosphere was flawless throughout that book. And quite recently, and I have a vlog of this, I read Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. That ended up with me in so many tears. I couldn't read the final 3 pages because I was so blurry-eyed. And then even 5 minutes after I finished reading the book and I started vlogging about it, I ended up bursting into another round of tears, which, you know, I have immortalised in video, so I'll link that above. But yeah, that was a great day. Writing. For writing, there are various factors that go into the rating. So there are things like how readable is it? Is it easy to follow? Do they try to be overly metaphorical and lyrical? Are they trying to be very pretentious and, oh, look at me and look at how intelligent I am and let me, which is, I hate to say it, but a lot of dark academia falls into this trap, which is why I don't really like it, because to me it just comes across as being a bit pretentious and I don't like that. But is it super heavy in terms of, if there's accents, have they written the accents in? Is the dialogue good? Does everything make sense? Things like for fantasy, if they've written a book in a medieval fantasy world and you start using modern day slang, no, just don't. Contemporary, if there's a lot of cultural references and pop culture references, I'm not really a big fan of that. Too many books have got references to a certain franchise that we no longer support on this channel, and it is so infuriating every time I find it, because I'm like, why are books in 2023 still doing it? But anyway, and I don't really like when there are two, I don't mind the odd one or two, but some books take it way too far and it's just like, okay, can we move on from that now? And then for me, the absolute number one thing that will give it a 10-star without any failure. It's kind of hard for me to say exactly why a book will get a guaranteed 10-star. I have discovered through my other videos that I've planned that I find atmosphere and writing are very closely linked together for me, because all the other categories have only got a handful of books, yet atmosphere and writing have both got about 30 books each written down. So I'm starting to realise I definitely link the writing style to atmosphere quite a lot of the time. But I think what would absolutely give a book 10 out of 10 is if it has flawless dialogue and interactions between characters, as well as it being very readable and easy to read and easy to access. I have a simple little brain. I don't do overly complicated things. I struggle with anything that gets too complex and too overdone. So simplicity for me, I'm a basic bitch. Simplicity is best when it comes to me. Now we come on to the most difficult category for me to talk about, which is actually plot. Because in 5 years almost of booktubing and being back into reading, 2 books have been given either a 9.5 or a 10 for their plot. And both of those were back in 2019. So the first one we have is A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab. And that got 9.5, and that's the final book in the Shades of Magic series. And then Alice by Christina Henry got a 10, which I stand by when I think about it. I've reread it twice now, and it got 10 across the board on everything, pretty much. So yeah, I do kind of agree with those, but then when I think about it, like with Alice, I think the plot was because it was something so unique and different to anything I'd read, but I kind of struggle to think about plot, and I've realised I'm definitely more of a character-driven kind of girl. When I look back at some of the DNFs that I've had in the last couple of years, the majority of them have been very plot-heavy and very plot intensive. I struggle with adult fantasies, even though I want to love them, and I love like adult fantasy films. I struggle with the books because they are usually, even if there are good character developments, there's so much plot in there that it just takes away from the enjoyment for me. I've realised Priory of the Orange Tree, I think that's why I struggled with that, is because it was just so plot dense. I was like, ugh. But yeah, I like, again, quite simplistic plots. I don't like things that get overly complicated. I don't yet know what really gives a 10 out of 10 for me. I have asked around on social medias, and I will ask below if you know any plots that you think are absolutely immaculate, could do no wrong, and were perfection. Please, for you, let me know and I'll give it a go. But things like, one of the things that G suggests is things like, did you predict what was coming up? So if you're reading a murder mystery, did you figure out the murderer on the first page? And were there enough red herrings and things to keep you going? I do find that I tend to have more enjoyment for a book when I don't see things coming. Because even though, yes, it's exciting when you're like, ha, I knew it, I predicted that right at the start, it can get a little bit frustrating when you've done it about 50 times and you're like, okay. So yeah, if you have any books that you think have just got supreme superiority plot and just better than anything else you've ever read, please do let me know, because I really want to start reading more books that are plot driven, just to get more of an idea of what it is for me personally that will give a book a 10 out of 10 for plot. Then we go on to Intrigue, and I really like Intrigue. I find Intrigue quite fun. G did a video very recently, and that's what sparked this entire thing. She did a video where she used Intrigue as a key for getting out of book slumps, because her logic was, if a book is super intriguing and engaging, it's more likely to get you invested. So if you're in a bit of a book slump, reading a book that you can maybe just sit and ingest in one go, or that's going to keep you hooked, might help you get back out of a slump. So what am I looking at for Intrigue? Basically, am I invested in this book? Do I want to know what happens next? Do I care who the murderer is? Do I want to know the magic system? Am I interested in the magic system? So basically I see Intrigue as investment and interest as well. One of the biggest things for me, and the thing that gives it a 10 out of 10 guaranteed, is how quickly did I digest this book. If I finish this book in a day, it's guaranteed 10 out of 10, because that means that I have just sat and read, and I have foregone anything else that I was supposed to do that day, because it is just that good that I can't stop reading. Some of the books that fall into this category for me are These Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan. I didn't expect to be interested in this, especially as so many people said it was linked to it was like a rip-off of ACOTAR. Haven't read ACOTAR, can't tell you if that's true, but I really enjoyed These Hollow Vows, and yeah, I thought it was a great time. It kept me invested. I read it in 2 or 3 days. And every time I put it down, I just kept thinking about picking it back up. Poison Study last year, I read that in 1 sitting. Winter by Marissa Meyer, which, even though it's the 4th book, I do know all 3 of the previous books I read in very quick succession to one another. But that one, I read the whole 800 pages in just over a day and a half, partly for time constraints, because it was the last day of January and I wanted to get it finished, partly because it was just that damn good. I didn't want to put the bugger down, and I just sat and read it for like 6 hours. The Plated Prisoner as well is a really good one for that for me. Book 2 and 3 I read in 7 hours flat, and when book 4 came out last year, which was also book of the year for me, but when Glow came out last year, I sat and I read it in about 5 hours, so it was a fantastic time. And they're very easy digestible. All of them as well, I've noticed, all of those books had really nice, easy, clear writing and weren't overly complex. So I get on really well with those. Then we have logic. So here we are looking at things like, does everything make sense? Do the characters seem right for the setting? So if you've got, say, a character, it kind of links to writing a little bit with the dialogue, but if you've got a character using modern day slang in medieval Germany and they're saying things like, all right, really? Like, no. If you've got a character that has a disability and yet suddenly they can do things that if people have that disability they physically can't, again, not great. Things like, do the characters know things that realistically their character shouldn't know? So are they metagaming in a sense? Have you got a character that's never studied Shakespeare in their life, yet they figure out a clue that's been written in Shakespearean, and they go, oh, it's from this, and you're like, but you've never studied that play in your life. Why do you know that that's where that comes from? Obviously, there are times where people do know random stuff. Like, I know the most random shit ever, and even I sit there sometimes going, how do I know that? But at the same time, if it happens all the time, it's a bit of a problem. Is the world building sensible? If there is a map in the book, which is always guaranteed to give you some points, if there's a map, is the map overly complicated? Can you actually understand where people are and where they're going and who's what and where's when? Does everything make sense? Is everything understandable? If everything is, then brilliant. And for me, certainly for logic, 10 out of 10 is it's very clear that either you have written from experience or you have researched the hell out of it and you've had things like sensitivity readers, or if you've really made an effort to diversify your book, or you've just made it really accessible. It's very clear that you've done your research and everything in the book just makes sense and everything's great and there's no real major flaws anywhere, then yeah, that's going to get you a 10. And again, logic is one of those ones that very few books have made it to a 9.5 or a 10, but ones that have, we have 16 Souls by Rosie Talbot. And I've said in the past that I think this is one of the best, if not the best, representation of disability that I've ever seen. Even though she herself is not a bilateral amputee, it is very clear that she has done her research not only on what it's like to be an amputee, but to be disabled. She's talked to people and done interviews and done research. She's also researched York and all the ghosts. She even said that she went to York to get a feel for the streets and the places that she was writing about. And it was very clear in her writing that she had done that research, but also had incorporated people that lived from the area and have gone through that experience as sensitivity readers, because everything felt natural and read really, really well. And then finally we have enjoyment. So basically this is just overall enjoyment. Did the book have a lasting impact on you? Are you emotionally invested in this book? Are you still thinking about it after you finished reading it? As soon as you finished it, do you want to pick it back up again? If it is a series, do you want to continue it? Those kind of things, and just your overall experience of combining everything together. And for me, an absolute 10 out of 10. I've mentioned a few of them already, but if I finish a book, such as when I finished the Shades of Magic series, I closed the last book and I sat and cried because I didn't want the series to be over. And it was also a very emotional few last chapters that also had me a little bit. So if I immediately want to reread it, if I sit there and I think about it years later, I still have characters that I read back in 2019, 2020 that just pop into my brain without any prompting and without permission. They just go, hello, we're still here. And then I go, fine, I guess I'm going to go back and reread you again. Looking at you, Nalini. The reason I ended up rebuying Spellslinger is because every now and again, Rikus, is it Squirrel Cat? I think Squirrel Cat just comes into my brain and I'm like, go away. And I'm like, I swear he's my inner demon voice. But yeah, there are multiple books that just live rent free in my brain, come back, and I just enjoyed. And when I finished the book on the spot, I was just left with this overwhelming joy. And if a book does that, it is guaranteed 10 out of 10. Many Nalini Singhs do that. There's a reason why the Side Changeling series is my all-time favourite series. A wild Ginty appears. Alice by Christina Henry is another one. 10 out of 10. One of the best experiences I have ever had, and I've had that experience multiple times, and it gets better every time. Cemetery Boys did it. House of Earth and Blood. Even though I hated the second book, and we all know how much I hated the second book, but the first book still sits with me, and some of the characters from that book still live rent-free in my brain. I quite often think about Rune. And Ethan, because I know a lot of people don't like Ethan, but he's actually one of the few characters I am interested in. I do not like Bryson, I do not like Hunt very much, but I love that gang with Rune and Tristan and Ethan, and I can't remember the fish guy, his name. But all of that group, absolutely love them, and I think about it quite regularly. The last book for enjoyment that I'll talk about, the first time I really struggled because there was just so much information, so much lore, so many characters, and I just got very overwhelmed, and the age of the character in her setting didn't sit right for me, and I was still uncomfortable with it. But on the second reread, I had a much better time. The characters were far better because I actually understood what was going on. And the overall enjoyment went from something like a 6 to a 9, and that was Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. And I am now extremely hyped for the sequel, and I really want to get my hands on it. That's just a breakdown of how I use CAWPILE, some of the things that I look for in a perfect book. And like I said, I'm going to follow this video up soon with going through each of the categories and doing things like, if you like character-driven books, using this list just to help me go, so if you like character-driven books, read this. If you like books that make you feel all the feels, read these. If you like books with immaculate writing, read these, etc, etc, etc. So yeah, let me know in the comments below, do you use the CAWPILE rating system? If not, do you have your own system that you use? And what are some of the things that you feel are guaranteed to give a book absolute, flawless, 10 out of 10, 5-star, cannot do any wrong? Also, like I said, if you know any books that have got absolutely immaculate plot, or you think are some of the best plots you've ever read, please let me know, because I would love to read some more. I don't know what I'm doing, but I will go. So I hope you're good. I hope you're staying safe. And until next time, bye.